Hey everyone, a good Erev Shabbos and a good Chodesh. I hope this message finds you and your loved ones and your families healthy and safe and well. We should all be zocheh to experience the essence of this month of Iyar, Ani Hashem Rofecha, that there should be healing for individuals and for communities, and that there should be healing and refuah for the entire world. I can't tell you just how heartwarming it was for me to see so many of you participate this past Tuesday night in our virtual Yom HaShoah, evening of Holocaust commemoration and discussion with our beloved Buchenwald survivor, Chef Meir Rappaport, who told of his story, the triumph of his survival, and how it was his emunah, it was his faith that carried him so much then, and that he adjured us and told us that we have to find our faith likewise now as well in these unprecedented and uncharted waters of the days for which we find ourselves so worried and concerned. It's our faith, it's our emunah that we have to know will carry us as it did for him then, will carry us likewise now as well. I was also so happy to see so many of you in the Zoom room and the virtual learning, the classes, the shiurim throughout the week, but I think that it goes without saying that it's just not the same. Oh, how I'm missing so much to see you all in person, longing for that time we'll be able to learn face-to-face together, to daven in the same room and the same minyan, to see each other in friendship and chit-chat, camaraderie and conversation. We have to remember to ramp up our tefillos, continue to storm the heavens with our heartfelt pleas and fervent davening, that in Mirz Hashem we should be zocheh to experience Yeshua's Hashem keheref ayin and come together, please God, very soon. In the Parshos this coming Shabbos, Parshas Tazria and Mitzorah, two of the 7 Parshos that we will read over the next 4 weeks, we read about the tzaras and the affliction, the Mitzorah, the person who the bulk of the Parshos describe one who is afflicted. Afflicted, as the Gemara tells us in the Maseches Erchin, for a number of reasons, predominantly and usually understood that the main reason being because a person spoke negatively about someone else, the issue of the prohibition of Lashon Hara. So the bulk of these Parshos describe the lesions, the tzaras that afflicted a person's body, but it also describes the lesions and the tzaras that affects and afflicts a person's garment, a beged, but also in Parshas Mitzorah it tells us that the tzaras afflicts and affects also a person's bias. The Torah tells us, Kisavo el Eretz Canaan asher ani nosem lochem la'achuza. When you arrive in the land of Eretz Yisrael and Canaan, that I give you as an achuza, as a possession, so what will happen? So v'nasati neged tzaras beveis Eretz achuzaschem. So I will place a tzaras, I will place this affliction upon a house in the land of your possession. So we see that it's not just on a person's body or beged, but it's also on a person's bias, so it's also on a person's house. Now the Medrash Rabbah tells us that actually this would come as an onish. This would come as a punishment for somebody who was wealthy, a person who was an oshir. And yet that person acted very stingy. That person acted very miserly, always claiming that he had nothing to give to tzedakah, had nothing to give to charity. So what happened is part of this process of the tzaras habayis, so that person would be forced to take all of his belongings outside, out his front door, leave them in his front lawn, and everybody would then be able to see just actually how wealthy in fact he was. So that's what the Medrash Rabbah says, that it was a onish, it was a punishment that this person, this miserly and stingy person had. But it's interesting to note that Rashi, among others, say that there was a schar, that there was a reward. Rashi says, "It's b'sari hilahem shenegoyim b'ayim alehem," that this was a good tiding for them, that the afflictions came upon them. How do we understand that? That there's a tzaras and a bias, that there's a schar, that this is good for them, it's a b'sura tova. How you lose your home and you have this tzaras affliction on your bias and it's a schar, it's a reward. So how are we to understand it? So Rashi famously tells us that the reason why it was a schar is because the Emorim, for 40 years, while the Bnei Yisrael were traveling the desert, they hid treasures, golden treasures in the walls, thinking that they're going to come back to their houses, they're going to come back and recapture their treasures, which of course we know they didn't. And when Bnei Yisrael entered into the land, they entered into these homes. So the coloration that was on the various spots on the houses, they indicated where behind these spots, when there was a demolition against these walls. So they'd open up these walls and they'd see the gold, they'd see these treasures, and this would be a schar. They'd have these treasures, they'd have these possessions for themselves. So how are we to understand that? What does that mean? That there are these treasures, that's a schar, as a result of the tzaras, the affliction that affected the walls of their house. I think that there are two very profound lessons, life lessons, but lessons nonetheless that we can find tremendous meaning in our days that we find ourselves in now. I believe that there are two powerful lessons. The first is that we know that sometimes when things go wrong, when things go awry, we cry out to Hashem and we say, why have you cursed us? Why have you made things so difficult for us? And little do we realize that actually what's happening is that we're taking, yes, a few steps back. But the 3 or 4 steps backwards that we take are actually in order to move hundreds of steps forward. We actually don't realize that sometimes the greatest treasures in our lives and the greatest blessings in our lives come through difficulty and trials and tribulations and travail. We fail to realize just how often that happens. This is as the Gemara in Maseches Brachos famously tells us and puts it, Kol man da'avid rachmana l'tav avid, which means that anything and everything that the Ribono Shel Olam does, he does it for the good. And so we have to really try to caress and finesse our faith to believe that everything that Hashem does, that even though sometimes it doesn't seem that way, we're wondering, scratching our heads, trying to figure out what in the world is going on. Why is it taking so long? When's everything going to reopen? When will things go back to normal as we once knew it? So nonetheless, despite the fact that it seems so hard, everything is for the best, and we have to trust with our emunah, with our faith, with Meir's faith that he gave to us and he tells us that we have to have. It's that faith that helps us to appreciate this very important point. But I believe that there's a second, also very important message, and that's the lesson of the incredible gifts that exist inside the walls of our homes. You know, that a number of people have told me that over the past number of weeks during this quarantine, self-imposed or otherwise, that they found themselves doing a variety of different projects, looking in closets and cupboards and places that perhaps they haven't seen for some time. They found picture albums, they found books and heirlooms, things that they thought that they lost, and now they rediscovered and they found that it's unbelievable. They found treasures in the walls of their houses. So I had a very similar experience. One of my children, my 5-year-old son, was going through one of the drawers haphazardly and jolly and go lucky, and he saw and he found a digital camera. You see, for the youngsters that are watching this, this video, you're not going to necessarily remember know what a digital camera is, but your parents or grandparents can tell you what a digital camera was. Today we have iPhones and iPads and iPods. Who has a digital camera anymore? So he found my son this digital camera, and he looked at it, and it was a treasure, and he said to me, Tati, can I keep this camera forever? So I said, Sadako, you can keep the camera forever. And what he did with this camera is he was going around the house and he was taking pictures of people, close-ups, and of all various scenery. And I saw him one afternoon. He's in the backyard and he's in the front yard and he's taking pictures of literally every bit of foliage and flowers that he can possibly find. And he's taking hundreds and hundreds of pictures. And he comes into my office one day this week and he says, Tati, can we have a meeting? I said, a meeting with my sweet 5-year-old, my pleasure, my joy, my love. And he goes to show me all of his pictures. And one in particular, he says to me, Tati, look at this picture of this beautiful flower. And this beautiful blue flower that is on the screen of this digital camera. And he's looking at it and he's showing it to me. And it dawned on me and realized then that sometimes, we go through life and there's so many beautiful flowers that are in our garden. And sometimes we fail to look at them. And I'm looking at this beautiful color and I'm seeing the joy on his face and his appreciation. And I myself have this renewed appreciation for my garden and for the flowers that are in my property, in my house, and the flowers that are in our midst. And how many things are there that are flowers and are gems, that are treasures, that are within the walls of our own homes? So I took his face and cupped it with my hands and I said, Sadako, there are beautiful treasures and that flower is no doubt beautiful, but my greatest treasure is the treasure that I'm looking at. You are my treasure. Dear friends, let's use this time to appreciate that the tremendous treasures that exist in our lives might be the treasures that are in our walls, that are within our Daled Amos, the beautiful scenery, the beautiful flowers, but our families, our parents, our children, our siblings, and even if we can't actually be with them in person, the FaceTime, the letters, the messages, the opportunities that we can express just how meaningful they are to our lives, the treasures that we have to look for and we have to always cherish each and every one of our days. And that's the message, I believe, the message of the hidden treasures that Bnei Israel found in the walls, that because of the affliction and the hardship that forced them to now break down the walls, or because of the tzaras, or because of that difficulty, and the difficulty that we find ourselves in as well, helps us locate and value the treasures that are all in our lives to find. I wish each and every one of you a peaceful, a healthy, a joyous, and a spiritual, a beautiful Shabbos.